All right, I will say good morning. Let's begin. Our daf today is daf Dalit. We begin from the bottom of Gimel Amud Beis. So the Gemara says the following: V'itmar Allah. We have a lot to do today. 2, 4, 6, 7 lines up from the bottom. V'itmar Allah. So we'll say, remember again, we are trying to analyze a Beitzah, and in the Beitzah, we quoted the view of Rabbi. We quoted the statement, and the statement was that a Beitzah Shnol B'Yom Tov is not going to be batal. I should say, excuse me, I take that back. Safek Beitzah is not batal. Is ultimately not going to be batal in a mixture. And we tried to figure out about that. What exactly is the case of Safek Beitzah that won't be batal? So the Gemara quoted the view of Rabbi Meir, and Rabbi Meir said, Es Shedar Kolimnos Mekadesh, because ultimately something that is reckoned as individual units will not be batal in a mixture. So the Gemara says, Itmar lo, we learned about this. Rabbi Yochanan said, and I will say, Machlokes Rabbi Yochanan and Reish Lakish about the position of Rabbi Meir. So Rabbi Yochanan said, Amar es shedar kolimnos. Rabbi Yochanan said that what does this refer to? This refers to an item that is exclusively sold in individual units. So an item that is exclusively sold in individual units is never bottled in a mixture because it's chashuv. Reish Lakish, Shimon Lakish, or Reish Lakish said, Kol shedar kolimnos shaninu. Reish Lakish says even something that's not exclusively sold as an individual unit, but ultimately, again, is sometimes sold as an individual unit, is also not bottle. So the Gemara says, a fundamental machlokes in terms of, does it have to be an item that is exclusively sold as an individual unit, sometimes sold as an individual unit? Which one of those items will not be bottle? So the Gemara says, Hani Charab Shimon Lakish. So again, I will say Rabbi Meir's position, or saying that the Beitzah reflects the view of Rabbi Meir, that lemais an egg is not bottle makes sense quite Reish Lakish, because an egg is something that is sometimes sold as an individual unit, but not always. Then it makes sense according to Reish Lakish's opinion, Rabbi Meir, that an egg wouldn't be bottle. According to Rabbi Yochanan, an egg is not exclusively sold as an individual unit. What could be said? Amar Papa, Hai Tana delitra ketsiosu. So we'll say it's very interesting answer. The Gemara says the Tana of the Beitzah above is the same Tana of the case of the litra. We'll say litra is a measurement of ketzios. Ketzios are dried figs. Because this Tana holds that any item that is reckoned individually, that is a davar shemin, which means it's individually significant, is not batal. So the Gemara says v'chol shekain, lo batal afilu b'drabanan, even midrabanan, v'chol shekain b'daraisa, even with the daraisa. This is the Tana says that even a derabanan is not bottle. Kol shekein a da'araisa. What's the case? This now we learned in the Mishnah. Litra ketzios. If you have Rabbosai a litra. Now this is talking about over here. Litra is a measurement. So a litra of ketzios, a litra of dried figs that are truma. Rabbinic truma. And what happens? Shadar sa'al pi eagle. The Rabbosai, the way you would deal with figs is how you take figs, you'd spread them out first to dry, and then after they dried, you would remove their stem. After you remove them stems, you would press them together like into cakes. And that's usually what we call the eagle shel devela, a cake of pressed figs. So now let's say you have this litra, you have this amount of truma figs, and what happens? Shadar sa'al pi eagle. You pressed it into a round mold. Ve'enu yodea be'eze eagle darsa. But you don't know which round mold you pressed into. So we'll say you have a whole bunch of round molds of pressed figs. One of them happens to be truma. You don't know which one is truma. So what do you do? Or darsa pi chavis, ve'inu de be'eagle, darsa pi chavis, or for that matter, you pressed it into the mouth of a cask, ve'inu yodea be'eze chavis, and you don't know which cask, which barrel you put it into. Darsa al pi kuras, or kaveres, you put it in a basket, and you don't know ve'ini odeh be'eza kaveres darsa, and you don't know which basket you put it into. So what's the halacha? So we'll say now you know you have a litra of truma figs, and you don't, or meiser figs I should say, and you don't know which utensil it's in. So what do? Omer, so the Gemara says Rabbi Meir, Omer, Rabbi Eliezer, Omer. Rabbi Meir says the following. Rabbi Meir is quoting Rabbi Eliezer. Rabbi Eliezer says, top of Dalit, Roen es halyonos kilo in prudos. We view the upper layers as if they are separate. Vatachtonos ma'alos es halyonos, and the bottom ones come and overtake. The bottom ones come and overtake the upper ones. So I will say, what does that mean? Rabbi Meir is essentially saying is we view them as a mixture. We view them as the upper layers getting mixed in with the lower layers, and essentially what occurs, there's more permitted figs, bless you, than truma figs, and therefore again lemaisa the truma figs are bottle. Okay, Rabbi Yeshua says, Es im yesh shamei pumin yalu ve'imlav hapumin asurin. Shemer says if there are 100 permitted pumin, pumin means mouths. Meaning I will say if there is 100-to-1 permitted ratio of permitted figs to truma figs, then lemaisa again the figs will be bottle, and if not, then all of the figs will be aser. So the Gemara says ve'imlav hapumin asurin v'ashulayin mutarin. I will say again. Remember, the one thing we do know in this case is that the litra of figs were placed at the mouth of the cask. Now, the good thing about figs is that figs, they're not going to mix themselves up. So we know that the prohibited figs are stationary. So what Rabbi Meir suggests, what Rabbi Yoshua suggests is, if there's a 100-to-1 ratio meaning if there are 100 mouths of the utensils and one truma, so then the truma will be bottle. If there's not, then the truma is not bottle, which means again the figs in the area of the mouth of all of the utensils will be usher, but the figs on the bottom will ultimately be permitted. Rabbi Huda says, Rabbi Eliezer Omer, Im yesh sham me'apumin. So we'll say Rabbi Huda has a different version. Rabbi Huda says that according to Rabbi Eliezer, if there are, or it's just different names, I should say, if there are im yesh shamei apumin yalu, if again lemaisa there are 100 times permitted figs and the prohibited figs are bottle, ve'imlav, and if not apumin asur, and the mouths are asur, v'ashulai mutarim, but the figs on the bottom are mutar. Rabbi Yeshua says afilu yesh sham shlosh me'os pumin yo lo yalu. So what's Rabbi Yeshua is of the opinion that even if there are 300 times more permitted figs, the figs are not bottle. In other words, according to Rabbi Yeshua, the prohibited figs are always prohibited, never become bottle. Darsa be'igol. Look at Rashi Rabbi say Rabbi Yeshua Omer afilim yesham shlosh meos pumin v'kulim bichlal asafek ein malin es hayachid hoelu pumi akli davar sheyesh bo minyanhu v'lo batli v'afilu b'dirabanan v'al darsa. So also listen to this. So according to Rabbi Yeshua, because again the figs in the mouth of the utensil are what's called a davar shebeminyan. There would be something that is sold individually. Therefore, lemaisa they are never bottle. Even in a ratio of that 300-to-1 is a guzma, it's just an exaggeration. But no matter how large the permitted ratio, the figs will still not be permitted. The Gemara goes weiter. Adarsa be'igel, if you went ahead and you pressed the figs into a round mold, ve'eni yodeh be'ezo igel darsa, but you don't know into which round mold you went ahead and you placed it, the halacha is divrei hakol yalu. Everyone agrees that what? That the figs will be bottle. So the Gemara says, what are you talking about? Divrei hakol. What do you mean everybody agrees? Hainu plutayu. We just had a machlokes above that said not everybody agrees. Amra Papa, this is the case. Hachi kamar darsa be'igel ve'eni odeh be'eza makom igel darsa ilit sefona ilit droma divrei hakol yalu. Rabbi say, oh, what's the case? The case is where, again, in the previous case, you had a litra. You introduced a fixed unit of the prohibited figs into the mixture. Here, what you have is you have a smaller amount of figs that are pressed into the actual mold itself. And lemaisa, you just don't know which part of the mold they were pressed into. You see, in the previous case, the prohibited figs occupy the entire top area of one of the utensils. You just don't know which utensil it is. Here, the figs were mixed into with other figs into the round mold, and you don't know which part of the mold the prohibited figs occupy. Are they in the north? Are they in the south? In that case, everyone agrees that it's bottle. Look at Rashi. I'll say, here's the difference. That in this case over here, Abosai, the prohibited figs are not recognizable as a separate, distinct entity. Shari medubakos, because they're stuck together with other permitted figs. And no one knows where the prohibited figs are. So we'll say it's very interesting. In the first case, what did you have? You have a litra. Now, a litra apparently is, let's say, the equivalent of a cake of pressed figs itself. So you had a cake of pressed figs of rabbinic truma that was placed. That cake was placed on the opening, on the mouth of the utensil. And what's the problem? You don't know which utensil it's in. Now, I will say that's called the davar shebaminyan. Why? Because in the marketplace, it would have been very common to do what? To buy the amount of figs that sat in the opening of the kli. Yes, there was I don't know how you would, whatever you'd call that. I'll take the mouth, a mouth's worth of figs. That's called, the mouth of the kle's worth of figs. In that case, that's called the davar shebaminyan. That is an item ultimately, again, that is reckoned individually. Therefore, it's not bottle. In this case over here, you have some amount of truma figs that are mixed in again with the rest of the mold, so they're stuck to other permitted figs. Because it's a mixture, therefore the prohibited figs are not called the davar shebaminyan. They're not called something that's reckoned individually. And because of that, they are bottle in the mixture. Ravashi says the following: the olam, in reality, the olam safek yom tov, safek chol. So we'll say now we're going back for just a moment. Look at Rashi. Ravashi Amar the olam hadiktani usveika asar safek yom tov safek chol ka'amar. So we'll say, listen to this. So now remember, we're now talking in the Beitzah. We were leaving Beis Hillel alone for a while, and we're talking in the Beitzah. And in the Beitzah, we had a case of the egg, safek egg. And what did the Beitzah say? That a suffix egg is aser. Now, we'll say, remember again, we had a machlokes. We don't know what the suffix case is. So, is it suffix yom tov, suffix and a yom tov, or we remember the last suggestion we had was what suffix treifa. Maybe the suffix is if the egg is from a treifa. Now, so Rav Ashi says no. The olam suffix yom tov, suffix chol. Havi. Reality, the case of the Beitzah is a case of where we're not sure, was the egg born on Yom Tov or was it born during the week? And therefore, again, Havi davar sheish lamatirin, v'chol davar sheish lamatirin afilu b'drabanan lo bot. And I both say, therefore, Rav Ashi says like this: the suffix of the case of the Mishnah of the Beitzah, is I'm not sure, was the egg born on Yom Tov or the egg not born on Yom Tov? And what did the Beitzah say? The Beitzah said if this egg gets mixed in a mixture, that it is not bottle. Why? Because also we said this already before. Bittul is a halachic mechanism to remedy doubt. When there is another mechanism that will remedy doubt, you don't rely on bittul. Therefore, I both say something called the davar sheish lamatirin, which means something that will become permitted. We don't rely on bittul to resolve the doubt. Rather, what do? We rely on time. So, because again, this egg, I will say one thing is for sure. I don't know if it was born on Yom Tov or not. Therefore, it's a suffix. One thing is for sure, which is I wait till after Yom Tov. What's the halacha? The egg is permitted. Therefore, if the egg gets mixed in, even with 1,000 other permitted eggs, we're not going to rely on bittul. Instead, what we'll say is we'll have resolution of doubt tomorrow. Tanya, the achirim say, Mishum Rabbi Eliezer, Beitzah tochal, hi v'ima. So we'll say again, the achirim say that the egg may be eaten together with its mother. Rashi says over here, Beitzah tochal imnol b'yom tov. So also now we have another Beitzah, and in this Beitzah the achirim say in the name of Rabbi Eliezer that when the Beitzah shenol b'yom tov, you could eat the egg and you could eat the mother. So the Gemara says, "My asking on what's the case? If you want to see what we're doing with the chicken that is set aside for consumption, then pshita. That's excuse me. Thank you. Pshita, that's obvious. That's obvious that you could eat the egg and you could eat the chicken, because it will say it's set aside for consumption. However, pshita divi mashaya. But rather, it must be if we're talking about a chicken that is set aside for eggs, how can you say that it and its mother are permitted? It will be asur. Why? Because it will say because the Pashtus is muktzah. Remember, if a chicken is set aside for laying eggs, then the Pashtus it was set aside for non-use on Yom Tov. You have no intention of slaughtering it. Therefore, again, the mother as well as the chicken should be asur. Amar Rab Zera tochal agav ima. So Rab Zera says, "Oh, what's the case? The case is that it can be eaten. It can be eaten agav ima, literally on the back of or together with its mother. What does that mean? Look at Rashi. Agav ima im ochlines ima hayom afhi. That apparently, again, what the Gemara is saying is, if you end up eating the chicken that day, you could eat its eggs also. What's the pshat? Heichi dami. This is very interesting. Amar Abaye kegon shalak chastam. Well, it's an interesting case, right? I'm out in the marketplace on Erev Yom Tiv, and what happens? I come home, I buy myself a chicken, right? Why? The price was right, I bought a chicken, and what? And I didn't decide for what purpose I was buying this chicken. Was I buying it for eggs? Was I buying it to slaughter? And therefore what? So that's what we call lach chastam. I bought it without any explicit intent. Therefore, nishchita, if I shechted the chicken on Yom Tov, chuvrara de la'achila omedes, so I'll say, what happens? If I shecht the chicken on Yom Tov, then what does that show? We'll say a little bit of a breira. Remember, what is breira? Breira is retroactive clarification. So if I shecht the chicken on Yom Tov, then what does that show? It shows retroactively my intent when I purchased it was for shechita purposes. If that's the case, Rabbosai, then if it's a tar negolas ha'omedes la'achila, if it's a chicken that's going to be used for consumption, then what? Then enochinami, everybody will agree that both the chicken as well as the egg will be permitted. Losh nishchata, if I did not shecht it on Yom Tov, then what? Hovrara, dilagadal beitzah omedes. Then it becomes clear that what was the point of the purchase? It was to be a chicken that was going to lay eggs, and therefore again the chicken is muktzah and the eggs are muktzah. Rab Mari says no. Guzma katani. When the Beitzah said that you could eat the chicken and the chicken and even its mother, the Beitzah was employing some degree of hyperbole. Disanya. We'll say, look at Rashi for just a moment. Rashi says over here, Guzma katani. Sometimes a person wants to make a point. Medaber yeser. A person speaks a little bit in exaggerated terms. And in reality, this is a chicken that is really set aside for consumption. So we'll say, in reality, we're not talking about the mother over here. The Beitzah is quoting an opinion that argues on Beitzah. Remember, Beitzah in the Mishnah says that Beitzah Shenol de B'Yom Tov is going to be Aser. Again, we had 4 different reasons as to why Beitzah holds that. The Gemara now is quoting a Beitzah that argues on Beitzah, and the Tana who's arguing on Beitzah is trying to make such a strong point that he says, not only can you eat the egg, but what? You could even eat the mother. Now, is he talking about the mother? No. Rather, he's getting a little bit carried away. He's trying to make a point, so he becomes a little bit emphatic. He says you could even eat the mother. So he gives an example of this. Desanya, we learned in the Beitzah, Achirim Omer Mishum Rabbi Eliezer, Beitzah Tochal Hi V'Ima. Rabbi Eliezer says the egg can be eaten together with its mother. Ve'efroch uklipaso. Similarly, you can eat a chick. You can eat a chick even together with its shell. So the Gemara says, "My klipaso." What do you mean with its shell? Ilema klipa. Even ilema klipa. Excuse me. Ilema klipa mamish. If you say you can literally eat the shell, klipa basachilahi. Can you able to eat the shell? Ela efroach biklipaso. But in reality, again, he must be talking about, again, the efroach, the chick, even together with its shell. So we'll say, again, employing some degree of hyperbole. Ad kan lo pligi Rabban Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov, el heichad yatzila avir ha'olam. So we'll say, I'm just going to read this now. We're not going to explain this now because we're going to see this machlokes tomorrow. This has to do with, can you eat a chick? Let's say you crack open an egg and there's a chick there. Can you eat the chick or not? So this is going to be machlokes Rabbi Eliezer and the Rabbanan. Again, we'll see it in tomorrow's daf. Right now, the Gemara is only quoting it because it falls into the hyperbole discussion. So ad kan lo pligi Rabban Ali Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov el heichad yatzila avir ha'olam. Until the Rabbanan only arguing Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov when literally the chick has come into the air of the world. But when the chick has not actually come into the world, there's no argument. Rather, Rabbi said when Rabbi Eliezer says that you can eat the chick together with its shell, what is that? That's hyperbole. So to over here, Rabbi Eliezer said that you can eat the chick and its mother. Then it's also hyperbole, meaning we don't care about the mother, we care about the egg. So I'm sorry, when we say that you can eat the egg and its mother, that's also hyperbole. Rather, you just talk about the egg. So also, what comes out is Rabbi Eliezer is arguing on Beis Hillel, and whereas Beis Hillel says that Beitzah Shenol de B'Yom Tov cannot be eaten, the point is that there are other opinions besides Beis Shammai who agree that it can be eaten. Itmar, we'll say another case. Shabbos v'Yom Tov. We'll say it's a very interesting case. Let's say you have a case of Shabbos and Yom Tov that fall out one next to each other. Now, it doesn't matter the order. It doesn't matter if it's Shabbos then Yom Tov or Yom Tov then Shabbos. But the point is, you have these two juxtaposed events of Shabbos and Yom Tov. So Rav Amar, Nol de bezu asura bezah. So we'll say, what happens if you have an egg born on one of these days? So you have 2 consecutive days of Kedusha. So Rav says, if the egg was born on, let's say, Shabbos, it is still asur on Yom Tov. Rabbi Yochanan says, Nol de bezeh, muteres bezeh. Rabbi Yochanan says, no, if it was born on one day, you can't eat it on that day, but it is mutter the next day. So we'll say, what's the machlokes? Neimar kasava Rav kidusha achasi. Perhaps Rav says that why Rabbi say why are the egg that's born on Shabbos be on Yom Tov? Because perhaps the kedusha of Shabbos and Yom Tov is one Kedusha. Now we've seen this already because remember, Rabbah, when he espoused his position of Hachana, linked Yom Tov and Shabbos together. So perhaps Yom Tov and Shabbos are really what we call one Kedusha, one protracted period of Kedusha. Granted, they're different halachic days and they have different halachos, but when they fall in succession, they're considered to be one protracted period of Kedusha. If that's the case, then an egg that was born on one of these days will be usher on the other day. On the other hand, now the Gemara says, but how could that be? V'ha'amar Rav halacha ka'arba'a zekanim. Ka'arba'a zekanim. Va'alibud Rabbi Eliezer damar shtei kedusha sein. Rabbi say Rav said the halacha follows the four elders, and like Rabbi Eliezer who says that there are two kedushas. Rabbi say this is actually referring over here to in the Rashi calls the Gemara Maseches Eruvin by Eruv Tchumin. If I want to make two different Eruv Tchumins for two different directions on two different days on Shabbos and Yom Tov, I can do that. Now, why can I do that? The only way you can do that is if you hold that it's two Kedushos, is if you hold that it's two separate days. Therefore, again, I could have an Eruv going in one direction for one day. But if I hold that it's one Kedusha, then Lamaisa, the Eruv I make for one day has to make for both days. So here you see Rav explicitly saying that you can make two Eruvim, which would seem to indicate that Lamaisa, again, it's Shtei Kedushos. Elahacha b'hachana derabba kamiflegi. Rather, Rabbi said the machlokes between Rav and Rabbi Yochanan is whether or not they subscribe to the position of hachana derabba. Or Rabbi say, what's hachana derabba? It's going to be very important. What's hachana derabba? We're starting at 4:30 tomorrow, right? Hachana derabba is that Rabbah holds that again any food on Yom Tov must be prepared from a Yom Chol. Right, any food for Shabbos Yom Tov vehechinu v'haya bayom hashishi vehechinu es asher yaviu. Rabbah holds that l'maisa again Shabbos and Yom Tov food must be prepared from a weekday. That's why again, if you remember again, Rabbah holds that in the case of Shabbos and Yom Tov that follow on one each other, a Beitzah that's known to be Yom Tov is usher. Why? Because the Beitzah was finished on Shabbos, and again it was hachana on Shabbos. So now the Gemara is suggesting over here that the machlokes Rav and Rabbi Yochanan is whether or not they subscribe to hachana derabba. Rav is the hachana derabba. So Rav holds this concept. Therefore, Rabbi in the case of Shabbos and Yom Tov, one after the other. So the ma'aseh, if an egg is born on Yom Tov, that means it was prepared when? On Shabbos, and that's usher. Because Rabbi again, according to Rabbah, you must be able to positively identify your food sources on Yom Chol, which would be in this case on Erev Shabbos. Because the Beitzah was nolda on Yom Tov, therefore it's prepared on Shabbos, therefore it's usher. Therefore Rav holds of Rabbah, Rabbi Yochanan, let's say Achana de Rabbah, and apparently Rabbi Yochanan does not subscribe to this idea. So because of that, Rabbi Yochanan does not require that food be prepared on a Yom Chol, or that you'll be able to identify the food on a Yom Chol. Therefore, L'maisa, again, even if everybody's going to, both Rav and Rabbi Yochanan will agree that let's say when the egg is laid on Shabbos, you can't use it, but Rabbi Yochanan will say by the next day it already becomes permitted. Rabbi will say it does not. Ki tanoi, so Gemara says, machlokes tanoim. Nolda b'Shabbos tocha b'Yom Tov. B'Yom Tov tocha b'Shabbos. So we'll say again, we have a Beitzah that says, if the egg was born on Shabbos, and again this is the case, same case of Shabbos and Yom Tov that are occurring back to back. Say if it was born on Shabbos, you keep it on Yom Tov, or Yom Tov, you keep it on Shabbos. Rabbi Hud Omer Mishum Rabbi Eliezer, Adayin hi machlokas. And Rabbi Huda says the name of Rabbi Eliezer. It is still a machlokes. Beis Shammai say tochal. Beis Shammai say you can eat it. Ubeis Hillel omrim lo tochal. And Beis Hillel say you may not eat. So Rabbi say what this price introduces us to us is the following: that not only is the machlokes Beis Shammai Beis Hillel in the case of Beitzah Shnol de Yom Tov, but the machlokes Beis Shammai Beis Hillel is a case of Shabbos v'Yom Tov as well. That when you have these 2 days that fall back to back, when you have an egg that is born on the first day, what is its status on the second day? And the Gemara is suggesting that this will still be a case, there will still be a machlokes Beis Shammai in this second case as well. What do you do with the egg when the egg was laid on the first day? What do you do in the egg with the second day? Will still be same machlokes Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel. And the Gemara is suggesting over here that this machlokes that originated as machlokes Rav and Rabbi Yochanan really becomes a machlokes as to whether or not you subscribe to the concept of hachana derabba. So the Gemara tells a story. Ushbezichnei derav adabar ava havaluhu hanach beitzim yom tov l'Shabbos. So what happened? The ushbezichnei Rabbi means the host. Rav adabar ava was staying in an inn or was staying at somebody's house, and what happens? His host had these eggs. these eggs miyom tov l'Shabbos. I will say so. The eggs. It's now Friday's Yom Tov. Friday's Yom Tov. We're going to go from Yom Tov into Shabbos, and the eggs were laid on Yom Tov on Friday. So what happens? Asa likamei. So now the balabas comes to Rav Bar Av and he says to him, "Mai la'at vinhu ha'idna v'nichlinhu l'machar." Can I roast the eggs today, but not eat them until tomorrow? So meaning the balabas realized I can't eat the eggs today because it was based on Shnol Yom Tov. What was he asking? Can I prepare them today? So because again, obviously they'll be permitted tomorrow. I think they'll be permitted tomorrow on Shabbos, but obviously I can't prepare them on Shabbos. So can I prepare them today and eat them tomorrow? They'll both say what he's really asking is what? I know that you can't eat the egg today on Yom Tov. What is he asking? Is the egg muktzah? Can I handle the egg today? Amrle mai daitech. So Rav Bar says, what's your thought process? Rav Rabbi Yochanan, halacha Rabbi Yochanan. Rabbi say when you have machlokes Rav and Rabbi Yochanan, the halacha follows Rabbi Yochanan. Which means what Rabbi say? That again Rabbi Yochanan says, Nolda bazeh, muteres bezeh. That when the egg was born, let's say on Yom Tov, and Yom Tov falls right before Shabbos on Friday, that it's permitted on Shabbos. So the Gemara says, Afidu Rabbi Yochanan lo kashari elo legoma lemachar. Aval biyomei lo. Rabbi say even Rabbi Yochanan agrees what? Literally, legoma means to swallow. Rabbi Yochanan says yes, the egg becomes permitted on the second day. But what doesn't Rabbi Yochanan allow for? Rabbi Yochanan doesn't allow for the handling of the egg on the first day. Meaning, so even Rabbi Yochanan says the egg becomes permitted on the second day, will agree that you may not handle the egg on day one, and therefore the answer essentially is no. You may not go ahead and roast it today because you can't handle that egg today. Obviously, then the only options you'll have for usage on Shabbos is what? Is you could swallow it raw. You could swallow it raw. You could drink the egg if you want, which I guess apparently at a point in time some people did.
You can open it?
I'm sorry, you could open it. You could open it. I'm sorry? Good. Okay. Good. Okay. Besides Rocky, I don't know. I don't know who's doing it. Ari told me that one. I didn't know that one on my own. Ari whispered it to me. Okay. So the Gemara goes weiter. Vatanya. So we learned. Vatanya. We learned in a Beitzah. Achas Beitzah, Aval biyomei lo vatanya. Achas Beitzah shnol de b'Shabbos, ve'achas Beitzah shnol de b'Yom Tov. Ein metaltlin osa. But we learned because now we'll say this vahatanya is not a question. Often vahatanya is the way we phrase the question. This vahatanya is actually is a proof. Is a proof to the idea that Beitzah shnol de b'Yom Tov may not be handled because we learned in a Beitzah. Achas Beitzah shnol de b'Shabbos, achas Beitzah shnol de b'Yom Tov. Whether the egg was born on Shabbos or on Yom Tov, ein metaltlin osa. You may not move it. Lo lachas. You can't use it as a bottle stopper. You can't use it to support your bed. So therefore, again, the mice again Rav Bar Ava tells the balabas, "I'm sorry, the egg will be permitted for you on Shabbos, but you may not roast it today." Another story. Ushbezichni derav papa, va'amri leahu gavra the aslakami derav papa. So havaluhu hanach beitzim mishabbos yom tov. So I'll say we have the following case. So again, Rav Papa is also either whether it's his host or it's just stam a guy. So a guy comes to ask Rav Papa a question, and he says, "What? I have these eggs hanach beitzim mishabbos yom tov. I have these eggs that were born on Shabbos. Shabbos yom tov. If you take a look at Rashi Rabosai, so he says over here. I'm sorry, but let's read. Hanach beitzim Shabbos yom tov. Asa lekamei. Amar mahu lemichlinhu lemachar. So what happened? So Rabbi said this was a case of Shabbos and Shabbos falling Shabbos and then Yom Tov on Sunday. So the balabas comes to Rav Papa and he says to Rav Papa, again the eggs were just laid today. I know I can't eat them today. Can I eat them tomorrow? Can I eat them on Yom Tov? Okay. Amar zil ha'idna v'ta lemachar. Do me a favor. Come back later on. Right? Leave now and come back tomorrow. Dirav lomoki amora iluya miyamatav lachavre mishum shichrus. Because Rabbi say Rav would often not go ahead. Literally means Rav would not establish an amora. Rav would not establish an amora for himself on Yom Tov because of drunkenness. Rabbi say the Tanoim, when they would give a shir, often did not go. They would state the information, and the Amora would then package the information in a way that was fit for public consumption. So on Yom Tov, Rav would not have his Hamora by his side. What that means is that Rav would not teach halacha on Yom Tov. Why not? Because of shikros. Because Rabbi say again on Yom Tov people have meals. During meals again people drink, and after one drinks, one is not supposed to paskin halacha. So therefore again apparently Rav Papa is saying to this guy, look at Rashi for just a moment. Rav lo moki Hamora iluya lo haya ma'amin mitorgaman lepiv lefanav lidrosh. Drash l'rabim miyom atava lechavre kilomar misha asa hayom tov dahainu la'achar suda ad lamachar mishum shichros. So we'll say in Saloch l'maisa, Rav would never go ahead and have his amorabah. He wouldn't give shir on Yom Tov. Why? Because l'maisa again there was drinking going on, and where there is drinking, one should not pass in halacha. So Rav Papa tells the guy, do me a favor, come back tomorrow. Come back tomorrow. I had a little bit to drink. Come back tomorrow. I'll tell you the halacha. So what happens? So the Gemara says the following: Ki asa l'machar. When he came back the next day, Amrlei. So Rav Papa responded to him: Eichu hashta ishtaloi. Literally, had I gone ahead and paskined for you yesterday, bishikrusi, while I was a little bit under the influence, ishtaloi, I would have made a mistake with my ruling. Why? What's the halacha? Va'amri lacha Rav Rabbi Yochanan, halach Rabbi Yochanan, and I would have told you the simple halachic principle that when there's machlokes Rav and Rabbi Yochanan, the halacha follows Rabbi Yochanan. What does Rabbi Yochanan say? What does Rabbi Yochanan say? That when you have Shabbos of Yom Tov, Beitzah shenol da bezu, muteres bezu. So had you come to me yesterday after I had a couple of lechaims in me, and after I was involved in Simchas Yom Tov, I would have told you, my reflexive answer would have been, you want to know the egg was born on Shabbos, can you eat it on Yom Tov? I would have told you, of course you can, because Allah has Rabbi Yochanan. But now that I had a little bit of time to think about this, ha'amarava hilchasa kavase dirav bahane tlas bein lekula bein lechumra. But Rabbi said, then I remember another teaching of Rava, and Rava said that the halacha follows Rav in three cases, lekula, where in lekula and lechumra, meaning follows Rav both leniently and stringently. And Rabbi said we will see these three cases, but again, look at Rashi. Hilchasa kavase dirav shamarling in Beitzah zumi Shabbos v'Yom Tov. So we'll say one of the three cases. We'll see the other two in tomorrow's daf actually, but one of the three cases in which he paskin like Rav is this case of Shabbos v'Yom Tov. Rav says nolda bezu asura bezu. So here you have Rav Papa saying again, had you come to me yesterday, I would have reflexively paskind like Rabbi Yochanan, because normally in all the rest of Shas, in Gan Shas, we have Machlokes Rav and Rabbi Yochanan, the halach follows Rabbi Yochanan, except in this case. There are three cases where he paskin like Rav, and this is one of the cases. Therefore, again, Beitzah shenol de bezu, asura bezu, says Rabbi Yochanan. Again, I will say, we have, just to tell you also, I have not done any halacha l'maisa purposely, because we really have to finish this sugya. Once we finish the sugya of Beitzah Shenolda, we'll go back and we'll do all of these halachas. But again, at least right now you have Rav Papa saying that the halacha in fact follows Rav in this case, and therefore Nolda bezu, Asura bezu. Rabbi Yochanan. So we'll say again, that's the end of that case. So now we'll say, so what ends off is the case of Shabbos v'Yom Tov. We end off with machlokes Rav and Rabbi Yochanan. Rav says Nolda bezu, Asura bezu. Rabbi Yochanan says Nolda bezu, Muteres bezu. And then we've seen two lemaisa cases that were paskined on differently. Right? We had the first case again of Ushbezichnei to Rav Adabar Ava. So Rav Adabar Ava again told his balabos that the halacha follows Rav, and we have Rav Papa telling his balabos, Rav Adabar Ava paskin like Rabbi Yochanan, and then we had Rav Papa telling his balabas that the halacha follows Rav, and Rav Papa telling his balabas that although normally the halachic principle is machlokes Rav and Rabbi Yochanan, the halacha follows Rabbi Yochanan, except in three cases, and this is one of these three. Fine. The Gemara goes weiter. Rabbi Yochanan, eitim shnashim min adekel b'Shabbos. So I'll say, let's say you have wood that fell off a palm tree on Shabbos. So we'll say again, there's another case of Shabbos to Yom Tov, right? So again, this is Shabbos and Yom Tov is falling out on Sunday. So you have wood that fell off the palm tree on Shabbos. Asr la'asikim b'Yom Tov. You may not use that wood to fire up your stove on Yom Tov. You can't use it. Okay, so the Gemara says, "Why? Va'al tishiveni Beitzah," and don't bring me the raya of Beitzah. So I will say again. Remember, Rabbi Yochanan is the opinion who says, "Nol de bezu, muteres bezu." So Rabbi Yochanan is going to say, "I know what you're thinking." So remember again, Rabbi Yochanan will say, "Wood falls off the tree on Shabbos." Now, obviously, when the wood falls off the tree on Shabbos, what's the status of that wood? It's muktzah, right? Now it's muktzah because the truth is it serves no purpose. First of all, it was mechuber, it was attached, serves no purpose. So Rabbi Yochanan is going to say, don't tell me that Rabbi Yochanan, contradicting yourself, because you said by the case of the egg, nolda bezu, muteres bezu. So too you should say over here, nishru bezu muteres bezu. The wood fell off the tree on Shabbos should be muter on Yom Tov.
The egg is ready the day before.
I'm sorry.
The egg is ready the day before.
It's already there. It's already there. Oh, so good. That's true. Also, it's already in its readily usable form. It's true. It's true. The keys are dissimilar. Mitchila Halan is saying, but he says like this. I'll tell you another reason. My time Beitzah mishum debiyoma, which true is Hanan. This is really, you're right. My time Beitzah. What's the reason for eggs? Mishum debiyoma namichazi legoma velo kashari la ad lamachar meida yedia debasyoma asrua. Rabbi say, here's the chap. When it comes to the egg, technically speaking, that egg is usable on Shabbos. So I'll say, what does it mean that egg is usable on Shabbos? L'maisa, again, technically, you could use it. How can you use it? You break it open, you give it to Julian, he's going to drink it, right? So again, meaning, technically speaking, that egg is consumable. It's consumable. The fact that you don't consume it on Shabbos indicates what? Why aren't you consuming it? Because it's muktzah. It's clear, meaning the fact that you could use it, but you can't use it. The fact that you could use it, but not that you can't, but you don't use it, indicates that lemaisa it was usher yesterday. It was usher on Shabbos. Therefore, again, when you come to use it on Yom Tov, it's clear that you're using it today, but it was prohibited the day before. However, eitzim. But again, the wood itself, which Rabbi said the previous day, was not fit for anything. Why wasn't it fit for anything? What is wood used for? Burning. Right? Burning. You can't use it on Shabbos. Why? Because the Ma'aseh will say you can't kindle a fire. So therefore, if you permit it on the next day on Yom Tov, Asi lemeimar biyomaihu nami shari. People will say that it was really permitted the day before as well. Ve'etmal mishum Shabbesu to lo chazu lahasaka. And the only reason no one used it yesterday is because what were you going to use it for? So it's a fascinating shikul. So Rabbi Yochanan says like this. Rabbi Yochanan says the reason why I hold by the egg that if it was nolad b'Shabbos that you could use it on Yom Tov is because the egg was in existence already on Shabbos and it was already fit for use. Technically speaking, a person could eat it raw. There's a possible usage, but yet what? Nobody does. What does that show? It shows that the egg is usher today. Therefore, when you eat it the next day, the fact that we allow consumption on the next day in no way erodes the fact that everyone knows that it was prohibited the day before. But if we allow you to use the wood that fell on Shabbos on Yom Tov, what's going to happen? People are going to assume that the reason you didn't use it on Shabbos was why? Because what are you going to use it for? Because Lamaisa, again, it's not fit for use because you can't. The only thing is fit for use. The only thing it's fit to be used for is burning. You can't burn it on Shabbos. That's why nobody used it. But were the eitzim themselves muktzah? No, they're not muktzah. And what reinforces that? The fact that I could use it on Yom Tov. Therefore, says Rabbi Yochanan, in order to reinforce the fact that the wood itself is muktzah on Shabbos, says Rabbi Yochanan, I prohibit its usage even on Yom Tov. So Rabbi Yochanan says the cases really are dissimilar. Amar Rav Masna. It's a very interesting case, but beyond though, this is even a more interesting case. What happens? Let's say this is on Yom Tov, this is not on Shabbos. Wood falls off from my palm tree, mamish right into my stove. Right? Amazing. Right? So the wood mamish falls off from my right, correct. The stoves are outside. Correct. I will say again, this is not like coming through your window, some amish like Nase over here. Again, people often have their stoves outside, and also don't think about the stove you have in your house. Like stove is the wrong word. It's an oven. It's a kira, right? So again, remember I will say what's a kira, right? A Talmudic kira, I will say is a pit with wood and a metal object on top of it. I'm sorry. Correct. So what happens? So now the wood falls from my palm tree directly into my fire on Yom Tov. So what happens? So that Ramasna says, Mar ba'alei eitzim muchanim umasikan. You know what you do? You just add in additional permanent. And I'll say the problem over there is what? The problem over there is that wood started Yom Tov how? Attached to the tree. So because of that, again, it was not set aside for firewood. Because it was not set aside for firewood, it really can't be used. But what's the problem? It's already in my fire. So what do I do in that case? So Rav Masa seems to suggest it's okay. Just add in additional permitted wood and masikan and fire up the fire like that. But how can you do that? You're going to be actively manipulating prohibited wood. To which the Gemara says, Kivan deruba deheteraninu kimahapech betera kamahapech. To which the Gemara answers, no, you don't understand. When we say put additional permitted wood, what are we saying? Is create a majority of permitted wood, and therefore what happens? The prohibited wood becomes batal. It's batal in a mixture of a majority. 1 second, but how can you do that? You're essentially advising me now to intentionally introduce additional permitted wood to proactively create a situation of bittul. Is that permitted? Utnan, we learned, Ein mevatlin isser lechatchila. Rabbosai, you cannot go ahead and be mevatel isser intentionally. Rabbosai, understand what this can do, right? What this can do is, you know what? I really, my chicken soup really requires just a smidgen of milk. That's part of the recipe, but it's not a problem. I'm going to intentionally introduce a little bit of milk, but it's okay. Why? Because there's definitely much more chicken soup. You can't do that. Bittul is a mechanism that only works ex post facto. You cannot intentionally create a situation of bittul. But it seems to hear that the halacha is telling me to intentionally create a situation of bittul. The prohibited wood falls in. No problem. Just introduce more permitted wood. To which the Gemara says, no. Hanimili b'daraisa. When are you not permitted to proactively create a situation of bittul? That's in biblical matters. However, when it comes to rabbinic matters, mivatlin. Shabbos Inachinam is very interesting. Seems to be that it's only midoraisa that you can't be mivatel lechatchila. Midrabanan you can. Uluravashi the Amar called davar sheish lamatirin afilu midrabanan lo batel ma'ikele meimar. And according to Ravashi, you said that davar sheish lamatirin, something that will become permitted, is not even batel midrabanan. What is there to say in this case? Rabosai, remember. So in this case, you should say the wood that fell from the palm tree is a davar sheish lamatirin. When will it become mutter? Right after Yom Tov, so therefore it shouldn't be batal at all, even if you introduce additional wood. When do we say that sheish lamatirin is not batal? That's when the item remains in existence. Hacha mikli kali isura. Rabbosai, but here what's going to happen? Rabbosai, the wood very quickly burns up. So because of that, it's not going to remain in existence. Because it's not going to remain in existence, that allows for bittul to occur. Okay, so we'll say next case, itmar. So we'll say again, just so you understand that happens to be. We'll cover this later, but that happens to be halacha l'maisa that with dirabbanans, especially dirabbanans that will quickly disintegrate, you are permitted to create a case of bittul lechatchila in order to negate a prohibited substance. So Gemara goes weiter. Itmar shnei yamim tovim. We'll say just one more minute, and then we'll have to stop. So what happens again? You have 2 yamim tovim. Shnei yamim tovim shal golios. So we'll say now we're going to get into the very interesting sugya of yom tov sheni shal golios. Very interesting sugya. So what happens? Itmar shnei yom tovim shal golios. Rav Amar nolda bazeh mutares bezeh. Rav says that an egg that is born on one day, first day of Yom Tov, is permitted its second day Yom Tov. Rav Asi says, no the bezeh asura bazeh. Rav Asi says, that which is born on day 1 is going to be asur on day 2. Lema kasava Rav Asi, so what's the machlokes? It must be that Rav Asi holds, kidusha achos. Excuse me. Ravasi Amar Nolda Bazeh Sura Bazeh. Excuse me, I'm sorry. Yes, so Rav says again, if it's born on the first day, permitted on the second day. Ravasi says no, born on the first day, usher on the second day. Why? The Rabbosai would appear because Ravasi must hold Kiddusha Achas. Ravasi must hold that the 2 days of Yom Tov have one protracted period of simcha. So the Gemara says, is that true? Rav Asi mavdil miyom hatav lechavre. Rabbosai, Rav Asi used to make havdalah from one day of Yom Tov to the next. Now what this means is apparently Rav Asi would actually make havdalah in between Yom Tov Rishon and Yom Tov Sheni. So I will say, Rashi says over here, Umevarech hamavdil ben kodesh lechol, dikasavar kimlon bekvia diyarcha, the Yom Tov Sheni chol gomerhu. Mishum minagav says, we'll see why he did this. Rav Asi felt that we are proficient with the calendar. We know when Yom Tov is. We only keep the second day because minagav asena biyadenu. It's the minagav of our forefathers, and therefore he would literally make havdalah. He would observe the second day, but he would also make havdalah between the first day and the second. To which the Gemara says, it's okay. He leveraged his bets, right? He leveraged his risk. Va'avid hachal l'chumra, v'hachal l'chumra. Rav Asi went l'chumra both ways. So he went l'chumra, and then he made havdalah between the first days because it's quite possible that the second day is really chol. But at the same time, he also had l'chumra that maybe the 2 days have one kiddusha, and therefore what? And therefore l'maisa Beitzah shnol debezeh will be asura bazar. So we'll say we'll stop over here again tomorrow morning. We pick up with a really this is the sugya of Yom Tov Sheni Shal Golios, which is a really fascinating sugya. So Mir Hashem tomorrow.